the Valley Current.
Hey, Pat, you're connecting to audio now. You have to put your glasses on to connect to audio. I like that about your automation. High security.
Hey, listen, I got some news for you. And I've been trying to send this message for 8 years, okay?
Okay.
And maybe the penny has dropped, but we are in an enormous money tsunami. Have you noticed?
I have noticed. Let me tell you why I've noticed. Without naming names, I get a call from a Vietnamese refugee who has a nail salon. I won't reveal the name. I won't reveal the salon. And she said to me, more or less summarize, broken English, I have partner that's not doing good work. Partner is not good. I don't like partner. I want to get rid of partner. Partner is 50-50 and he does no work. And I do all the work. And I said, okay, slow down. What are we fighting over? We have building worth millions of dollars. The partner wants his share. He won't sell me his half. I'm thinking, Vietnamese refugee moving to the Bay Area and buying a commercial building that's worth millions of dollars. Yes, it has dawned on me, Pat, that things have changed. And I'm not trying to be prejudiced. She's probably worked really hard.
It's not about being prejudiced. It's everywhere.
It's
It's
scary.
and so you're probably not old enough to remember the .com boom.
Yes, I am old enough. I rode that
That
up.
was a joke. You weren't supposed to bite on it.
I did.
Okay, that was a joke.
That was a joke.
Okay.
I thought I looked
So-
youthful.
I joined the desk in London for Tommy Wise Old Partners,
Mhm.
and I thought I had seen a money
Everything.
tsunami of the first order.
Right.
And then I left there and was on the desk at Jefferies in London,
Right.
and finally migrated to the trading desk at Royal Bank of Canada in London.
Okay.
You just sort of saw this grinding out after the big money tsunami from 1995 to 1999. And I believe that no one knew what had happened.
Right.
So if you stop and think about now, today, if we can imagine that global GDP right now is $105 trillion, the last number I looked at, if we can imagine the global GDP is $105 trillion,
Right.
every penny of global GDP flows through that interweb thingy.
Yeah.
Okay, in my opinion, that was the first time that we got some sense of scale. And you mentioned Stanford on the last call. So you think about the years that it took to connect the entire economy of America to the railroad system. The tunnels and all the time that it took, and the Erie Canal and all of those things to build out the distribution that allowed that flow of wealth to pour into the vested interests, the capital owners. And then suddenly, a couple of guys in University of Indiana and a guy in CERN in Geneva connected all up, and 15 years later,
Right.
you get this extraordinary money dump that is pooling in the hands of a tiny group of people, and only now are folks starting to have conversations about it. So
Right.
that's my opinion.
No,
I have never seen anything. I have never seen anything like it.
I think it's an exponential factor of what we saw 25 years ago in the run up to the .com, because the .com thing was interesting, but it didn't have the depth of what the AI thing now has. The AI thing has real depth, and it's scaring people in a way that the domain name and the websites, it didn't scare people. People just said, that's advertising. Okay, I'm going to get advertising. That's fine. The AI stuff is actually scaring people to the degree of, I may not have a job. This might completely displace me. Trump, who's going to obviously be on the air with Biden, rock'em sock'em robot style, And the interesting thing is he said, we use ChatGPT to create a speech. I thought it was beautiful. He said that. It shocked me. It was like him stating that, hey, I'm open to understanding what this AI stuff will do. I don't really hear politicians saying that these days, but he did say it. You got to give him a little bit of credit for that, right?
Yeah, for acknowledging the obvious. Look, I spent $35 4 years ago. I didn't like parting with it, but I did it anyway.
Yeah, what'd you buy?
I bought Mary Meeker's 1996 internet book when she was Morgan Stanley.
Okay.
And so that was arguably and considered the Bible of the internet. And
Right.
everybody was paying attention to Frank Quattrone and Mary Meeker. And so she wrote this big.
I remember it.
Yeah.
I
Okay. So
remember
I
her.
bought that thing and I read it. And so what she was amazed at, what she was trying to convince me was a big deal in 1996. It's like, it's like it's not even a T-ball game.
Right.
She couldn't, relative to the scale that we're experiencing right now,
Right.
she's trying to have a conversation about a nothing,
Right.
nothing. It's just
Right.
nothing. Even her brain at the epicenter of all that wealth that we imagined was a big number in 1996, even someone who was at the epicenter of all the smartest thinking in that world
Hmm.
couldn't her brain couldn't get past T-ball.
Right.
And so that's what's extraordinary.
Right.
And this idea about, and I keep talking about the Overton window because I think that's where the arbitrage is.
Right.
I mean, let's see. Example. You give me a little credit on the last call about the Nvidia call, and I was a bit
Oh man,
dismissive.
you were right. You were right on. You're still right on that. You're totally right
No,
on.
no, 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 no. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But hang on a second. I am functionally unemployable. And so because of that, I have time to monitor everything these people do. There is nothing that Jensen Wong does and gets in front of a camera that Pat Duke doesn't watch and pay
Oh, so
attention to.
you watch even the Caltech.
I watch the Stanford lectures. I watch the MIT lectures. I watch them all.
The Caltech
Okay.
graduation thing that he did, I
The
think,
what?
right? He did a Caltech graduation thing in which he released some dirt about some of his adversaries. It was interesting to listen to it to the very end. It's worth listening to. You might have
So
missed it. It was good. It was at.
I don't think I caught that one, but
You got to compare that
I do
one
the
to the
same.
Musk version 12 years earlier at Caltech. Musk did one.
Well, I do the same thing with Musk. I do the same thing with all these guys. But as an example,
Mhm.
he did a presentation on October the 9th
Right.
ish. Last October the 9th. It's a standard presentation. I've seen these things done 100 times, and I'm watching this thing. And then he said into the camera that was distributed on YouTube, and he stared in the camera and says, and now, instead of a 2-year cadence, we're going to shift the cadence to 1 year.
Wow.
And I rewound it like 10 times. And I said, well, the guy just told me that current earnings are going to double.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's effectively what he said. And so then I monitored the media for the next couple of days, and nobody picked. There's one little analyst at Morgan Stanley wrote a little one sentence about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so so you could see that fact that he pulled forward the earnings by 12 months, and it was immediately instantiated into the stock price. And so so that's when I started thinking about this relationship between the Overton window. What can Wall Street say and what can they not say?
Right.
And so we saw Micron report earnings yesterday affirming that capitalism doesn't work because it's not possible for anyone to compete against Amazon.
Right.
or
Right.
NVIDIA, because what he basically said on October the 10th was everybody that has my current GPUs in their data centers, in 365 days, they're going to be shit.
Right.
Going to be worth nothing.
Right.
Okay. And so then you realize it's a capital cycle. Who's got the who's got the most capital to throw at the iteration cycle? And you don't even have to wonder who's gonna own this space. It's TSMC, it's ASML, and it's NVIDIA. You don't have to thought about it.
Mhm.
And it's just it and it's just gonna accelerate from here. And that's why we don't do anything, because we can't tell anybody about it. And even if we did, what are you going to do? So anyway, this is the point that I keep trying to make to my 7 or 8 ne'er-do-wells that I send my bollocks to.
I read them every morning, as you can tell, because I often try to change the title to make it more catchy for you, figuring that you'll go through an editing cycle and you'll say, oh, maybe that's a better way to put the title.
Dude, I don't have a message. I just have a bunch of thugs.
Right.
You're one of the thugs. That's all.
Well,
you,
I,
you,
I'm glad I'm in that. I'm glad I'm in that class, because the truth is we don't really have people that think the way you think. We don't have enough of them. And the ones that think that they're big thinkers, like the Ray Dalios of the world and so on, they don't really get to the level that you're getting to in terms of what I call the Doug Engelbart view. The Doug Engelbart, you may remember Doug Engelbart invented the mouse. That's a minor invention. He invented the graphical user interface. He was at Xerox PARC. The guy never made a dime, but he had the ginormous vision. I put it in the book that's on Amazon that I wrote about how you start a business. The big picture vision he had was that in 100 years, everything is connected. He was saying this back in like the 1950s. And he was saying in 100 years, and he thought 2050, I think we've accelerated probably by 25 years. And I'll send you the link to his stuff, because he did.
I love to see it.
It's your thinking, Pat. It's your thinking. It's what's the way to think about the big picture of what's happening. And you say, who are the players that are the winners? Like Jensen Huang is a billionaire, probably will be one of the first trillionaires, maybe the first trillionaire. He might beat even Elon Musk. I think your money is on Musk, right?
Norbert Wiener, who I didn't take seriously, the physicist and scientist, I didn't take him seriously for years, and I started reading his books a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this amazing book called
Cybernetics, right?
yeah, he's the father of cybernetics, but he wrote a human machines for human things. I can't remember the exact title, but he said in the book, and he was a close he worked closely with John von Neumann, and
Right.
he said in one of his books, I'll send you the link. He said, von Neumann and Wiener spent a lot of time thinking about, at some time in the future, a machine will be able to beat a human at chess.
Right.
And there was this enormous discussion in 1952 about whether or not this could ever happen. And then the other thing that Norbert Wiener said, which was outrageously interesting, is he said that at some point, someone will invent the universal container. A universal container is sort of a throwaway term that you don't even stop to think about. "Oh, I wonder what a universal container is." And then all of a sudden, you watch the videos about the ITER fusion facility and all these, and you realize, a container to hold enough heat like the sun.
Right.
Now I know what a universal container is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you're able to connect the dots, but you can't get the dots connected if you have a job. If you have a job, you can't do it.
Yeah, you have to have
Okay.
the freedom. You have to have the freedom that you have. You're basically an academic sitting in a non-academic position, observing, like Yogi Berra would say. You can really see a lot if you start to observe, right? We can really
Look,
observe a lot, start to
uh,
look, right?
I don't. What is the ultimate dream of the capitalist? What is the ultimate dream of the capitalist? The ultimate dream is that they they just want as much money as they can. They just intuitively, it's just to create money which delivers power, and
Right.
you just can't have enough money. And you just it is such a shock to me that, unlike Ray Dalio, who would still be making minimum wage had he not married into a family, had his wife not, his wife's grandparents, I
Right.
can't remember which one it is a Whitney and a Vanderbilt.
Right.
Now, for some crazy reason, he never mentions that when he's having a conversation about all of his big ideas about finance and how to trade. He doesn't seem to bring up the fact that, had he not married into that family, maybe his view about market timing might be different. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
There is a
So,
graphic. There is a graphic on the internet that has his face, Musk's face. I think even Warren Buffett's face, and some fourth face. I'll figure it out. That say, these guys actually came from rich families. Don't think that they didn't have money. They didn't get money from sources that were family
what
sources.
is it? 65% of all wealth in America is inherited.
Right.
And
There's a
look,
ton of it. There's a ton of it.
the number of seriously, let's go down the list. I mean, who is it? Michael Dell. Michael Dell just did it. He was there in the middle and at the right time, and he capitalized on it. Jensen Wong, right time, capitalized on it. Let's see. I'll even give Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, you got to give some sway to the privilege. I mean, it happens. It's not his fault that he was able to go to Harvard, but you know what? Steve Ballmer lived down the hall. I mean, I'm not going to give Ballmer much credit for that.
Right.
He just got lucky with the room number at the dorm.
Right. Right place at right time. Right.
Yeah, but look, none of this would be going on were not this. And I don't know what to call this new era that we're in. And I think it needs to be done. And I don't think the second or third industrial revolution works, because you can really mark the lines of demarcation. I mean, they are just absolutely clear and specific. August 6, 1945, at 9:45 in the world changed when we dropped the atomic bomb. That
Right.
was it. Everything changed at that moment. And so 1903, the Wright brothers, that was it. Everything changed at that moment. I spend a lot of time thinking about those lines and those markers. And I got to tell you, the Netscape IPO, that was it. August 1995. Everything changed. Now we're at another one of those inflection points. We're there. And
Yeah.
so it's not going to come back.
We're fully there, and it's starting to be realized. But I think what you're saying, it's not really being realized what it means for the stock market, and how the stock market is likely to zoom even further up from where it is today. And I don't know how sustainable that is at whatever Overton limit.
Well, yes, you do. You know exactly how sustainable it is. And that's outside the Overton window. You know exactly how sustainable it is, because what drives it? The federal deficit.
Right.
Okay, so we already know what the deficit's going to be in 10 years. And if I know what the deficit's going to be in 10 years, I know exactly what the stock market's going to do. I don't have to guess what the market's going to do. I know exactly what it's going to do. The reason I know is because the correlation is 1-to-1. And all you got to do is look at the chart of the US federal deficit, and then look at the S&P 500, overlay the two, and then Pat Duke, moi, knows exactly what the market's going to do in 10 years. Period. End of story. So if I worked for a brokerage firm and I said that and I mentioned that, it's illegal, because you can't use the word guaranteed. It's against the law to use the word. Okay.
Use the word
Plus, I
again.
don't care how much money other people make. So, but and it's not important for me. No, you know exactly what the market's gonna, and you know who's gonna make the money now. And that's the difference. You kind of didn't know 10 years ago, but you know now.
The fourth person is actually Bill Gates, because Bill Gates came from a pretty wealthy family as well. His family gave a ton of money to him, but certainly they kind of set him up, right? I mean, these four people, Gates, Dalio, Buffett, and Musk, all had the advantage of being from families of some significant wealth. And it's true, you know, when you come from wealth, it's a lot easier. I didn't come from wealth, and I can tell you it wasn't easy. But let me just say, Pat, I want to go back to something you said earlier because it really triggered something for me. I've been listening in the author's voice to a book that was written by the guy, his name is Thorpe, and I think I sent this to you. Ed Thorpe.
And he
Ed
was
Thorpe.
big friends with Claude Shannon.
Exactly.
He
But
and
Ed
Claude Shannon, and they tried to build a machine to win at roulette,
Roulette, right.
and
But,
he
but the
was an
beauty,
early investor with Warren Buffett.
exactly. So you know, you say to yourself, there's a guy that knew what his edge was. And he learned early in life, very early in life, that his edge was he was really facile with mathematics and with numbers. And he could really do the numeric calculations really, really fast. And he had a critical ear for when people said bullshit. And he said, that number doesn't work. Like, he would listen to you and he'd say, oh, GDP, you think it's 105 trillion. It's actually 500 trillion. Why? Because these businesses are actually doing stuff that are pumping up the numbers even higher. Now, it may be 500 trillion, it may be 100 trillion. I don't know what it is. There's some range out there, but we know, because we've talked about it, that there's about 5 people in the world, maybe 10, maybe more. You might say more. I wanted to ask you, that are going to become trillionaires if they live long enough, as you know, they get to maybe Buffett's age. They'll have the value of the time. It won't be Buffett. Buffett will not be the first trillionaire. He's going to run out of time. He can't make it. I mean, he'd have to live to 125 probably to make it. But Musk, Huang, and probably Bezos,
Zuckerberg.
right? Zuckerberg, and you know, you could pick stocks. And that's the little graphic I sent you. I put a student, MBA student, on taking some numbers off of Yahoo and seeing the correlation or non-correlation. Turns out there's a non-correlation between Tesla stock moves and NVIDIA stock moves. They don't move together. In some ways, they almost move differently. They're perfect together. And they've got these two guys that are young enough to make it another 30 or 40 years, and they're going to become, or at least be in the running of becoming, trillionaires. And this is like the Who Wants to Be a Trillionaire show. You could bet essentially on these people as leaders, making sure they pump the stock up because they have a bigger goal, which is they want bragging rights and I guess shoot to Mars rights. Bezos and Musk in particular, I don't know if Wang has any of these ambitions, to basically say, I'm the richest man in the world. And I did it here in my lifetime in a way that is going to make a difference. Although I don't hear them saying what Gates is saying about charitable efforts and that sort of thing. It doesn't seem like they're tuned into that yet. And I know there was a big piece about Musk only using charities where it really assisted his workers or assisted his facilities. Like, they're very profit driven around how does this complement what I'm doing. And I want to say one more thing about Musk, because I have to say, he's the most interesting character in the world. The Wall Street Journal, before that vote, a shareholder vote, and I was one of the shareholders that vote, not that I had that many shares. And you know, the vote was interesting because they did disclose all the details, and I'm sure you read it, about his 56 billion with a B pay package, which the Delaware courts threw out. He both got that reapproved and got approved that they move the situs of the corporation to Texas, and they moved the headquarters to Texas, and they moved the corporation's actual formation, articles to Texas. So any shareholder can only bring suit in Texas under Texas law. Well, you know, the Texas lawyers are going to absolutely make sure that that pay package is upheld, because man, he probably caused the biggest jolt in Texas corporate filings since the beginning of Texas actually accepting any filing. And the people in Delaware must be really worried that he may be starting a sort of a trend that says, you want to knock stuff down, you're going to pay for it. And I'll tell you, Delaware has prided itself on the ability to say, oh, we make all the right corporate decisions. He didn't feel that that was the right corporate decision. But I want to make one last point, which is I listened to a podcast right before the vote that issued as a result of the Wall Street Journal article that said how he's essentially sexually harassing all these workers. And the podcast was brutal and the article was brutal. It didn't make a difference. It didn't matter. People were like, you know what? He's a male. There's going to be women that are around him. You know, it's just the way it goes. It's just the way it is. It was amazing to me. I thought to myself, Donald Trump must be jealous. Donald Trump must be so jealous of this. It must be just an amazing thing to watch.
So your boy Ed Thorpe and Claude Shannon. Shannon wrote Information Theory in 1948, and what Shannon proposed was information is only it must be a surprise, otherwise it's not information.
Right.
And so that's why I spend so much time thinking about that which must never be mentioned. And so so you mentioned the $56 billion pay package, and so that hit the tape on January 28th, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it was, so the number had to be, he had to take the company from 50 billion to 650 billion in 10 years. Otherwise, he got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 50 goes into 650 billion 13 times.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my little HPC, my 12C, HP 12C out. Okay. How many shares of Tesla does Pat Duke need to own to attach to Elon Musk's scrotum as he rides that to $650 billion market cap in 10 years for Pat Duke to have $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
So I embedded myself in that trade in 2018 as soon as I saw that pay package. I said, okay, I'll attach to this because I've never seen anything like this. And as Claude Shannon would say, that's a surprise, and therefore that's information.
Right.
That's something nobody knows. And so now
you went all in at that point, right?
No, I didn't. It was just 270 shares.
Okay. You did
It wasn't a big number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nobody is considering the fact that Elon Musk is no longer getting paid.
Right.
He has been paid.
Right.
And so where is the sort of Claude Shannon-esque surprise right now? Well, the surprise is, what shall he be paid?
Right.
So the next question is, when will compensation plan happen? And so my trade, not that it's a trade because I don't actually care.
Right.
What I'm doing now is I'm saying, okay, the new comp package is probably going to look like a lot like the last one.
Right.
So if I take 600 billion, which is the market cap today, and I multiply it times 13, which is what he did in 2018, I get to a $7.5 trillion valuation in 10 years. And then I say, well, he's already said in his tweets that all he wants is 25% more stock. Okay, well, what's 25% of 7.5 trillion? Turns out it's 1.8 trillion. Here's a human that is proposing a compensation package of only 1.8 trillion over 10 years, which actually comes out to 15 billion a month for 120 months. Okay. I mean, look, this is not special math.
No, it's
okay?
basic math.
It comes out, and then if you take Kathy Wood, she's got
Right.
a $3,100 estimate by 2029. Okay, so I use 600 billion to year end 2029, and I say, okay, so that comes out to 2.6 trillion. if I assume the stock hits her target in 2029, which is 16 and a half times the current price, that comes out to what? Only $40 billion a month. His
Mhm.
monthly compensation, she'll if Kathy Wood is correct, around 40 billion a month. And I challenge you to get your head around that. More importantly, I challenge you to pick up the phone and call someone and say, "Hey, I think Elon Musk might make $40 billion a month." I mean, no one's going to believe you. You can no longer have these conversations. And I am living in a science fiction simulacrum right now. Right now, you can no longer have a valid, viable conversation with anybody relative to these new digital monopolies. They
Right.
just they just can't happen. I mean, stop and think about it. Stop and think about it. Tesla is $600 billion market cap. Ford and GM are irrelevant. If you're a fund manager, you can't afford a conversation about the two companies that are worth $100 billion. They don't even
Right.
matter.
Right.
They don't even matter.
Yeah.
And so it's insane where we are. And the next one coming up is Verizon doesn't go, the stock doesn't go down, it goes to zero. So does AT&T.
Right.
I mean, you can't say to somebody, "Hey, Verizon goes to zero." You got to be kidding me. Oh, but Vodafone does too. So does
Mm.
Orange in the UK. So does Bartel in India. Bharti, I forget what they call it.
Right.
Movil in Mexico. They don't go lower. They go to zero.
Yeah. T-Mobile as well, I'm sure. Right.
Yeah, well, T-Mobile's a reseller. So T-Mobile's a reseller because Musk cadence, his launch cadence right now, he launches a new array of satellites into orbit every 48 hours.
Right.
That's a
Right.
launch cadence.
Yeah.
And so we have reached a world where you just cannot make this shit up. And you can't tell anybody about it.
You've got to read in a way more science fiction. I'm sure you're doing that
Well, I'm
because
reading. I'm reading William Gibson right now. I just finished Neuromancer. He's the first guy that used the word cyberspace in 1984.
right.
So I'm reading all of Gibson's work. I'm,
Right.
I'm reading William Burroughs,
Right.
reading his work. Which, by the way, he was able to shoot his wife in the head and get away with it
Get
because
away
his
with it.
family was the Burroughs Adding Machine Company.
Right.
I mean, that's some cool shit. A lot of people can't do that. You know, I mean,
Get away with it.
you just can't make it up. Is my point. And
And
and and and the cultural influences that you see it manifesting itself in the art market and in the world of art and the world of design, and you see Picasso's first Cubist painting in 19 when was it 1907. I'm pretty sure it was 1907, which was what 7 years 8 years after no, 11 years after Röntgen discovered the X-ray.
right.
And then suddenly you find out that, oh, hang on a second, who was funding Madame Curie's laboratory in Paris in 1905, 1908? Well, it was one of the Guggenheims.
Hmm.
So the, these people, these massive pools of wealth are there, and they're there early, and they never go away, and
You
it's
know,
so bloody interesting.
and you know
Um,
what?
uh,
The other thing, Pat, is I don't think the billionaires and trillionaires of the future are recognizing the big picture the way you are. I think you're at the level of Doug Engelbart, and there are very few people at the level of Doug Engelbart, so that's a big compliment. And I think Doug was so ahead of his time. People said it's just a mouse, it's just a graphical user interface. Doug, don't turn it into something far bigger. And Engelbart had the vision, and Engelbart's vision was picked up to some degree by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak when they said, we're going to start a company and we're going to leverage off of some of the stuff that we saw at Xerox PARC in Palo Alto when they visited, and they were interned there, or one of them was an intern there. And we're going to try to create a company that can do it at far lower cost, because Xerox can't, because
Right.
Xerox basically has fumbled it. And Xerox did fumble it, as did a bunch of other companies. And the interesting thing is, if we had the facility to interview the 15 candidates, maybe you'd say it's 20 candidates, maybe I'd say it's 5 or 10, and say to them, what's the big picture here? They wouldn't be able to state it the way you clearly state it, because
Well,
they have
thank you,
to
but
see it that way. It's a big compliment, really. It's a
well,
big,
thank you very much. But at its core, all that I do, I find broadly repugnant and broadly gross. And I'm not kidding about if we have a couple of people attached to our bizarre fund, it just, when they are sort of giddy about the gains that they have in Nvidia or Tesla or whatever, I mean, tell somebody else. I'm not interested.
they got to do what some investors did for me, because I helped do a startup that was like one of the big .com flashes in the pan. But I remember when it went public, because I remember the day I was sitting in my office in Palo Alto, and I get a call from a couple of the people that I brought into the deal, years earlier, and then I was on the board of directors and helped it get to its IPO. And they said, just go to the Ferrari dealership and buy yourself a 500, up to 500,000, because these two guys were going to pitch 250K a piece, because they made like 200 million bucks, 100 million each. And they were like, just go buy it. And I remember saying to myself, I don't really want a Ferrari. Maybe we should give the money to charity. They said, no, we can't give the money to charity. You got to buy the Ferrari so we could say that we bought you a Ferrari. I remember at the time, my previous wife, now deceased, she said, go to buy the Ferrari, go buy the Ferrari. And like an idiot, I didn't do it. I think to this day, had I bought that Ferrari, that car, or maybe if I had bought even smarter Ferrari stock, that's the one stock that probably will be the classic car company that survives as a car company, just based on its brand and on the stylish look of the car and the fact that it's built in Italy. But I didn't do it. And to this day, when I see those guys, they're like, yeah, that stock went down pretty fast after it went up pretty fast, as though I had some control over it. I obviously didn't. But it's interesting how people do get very emotional, and it does play into stock charts and into market action that occurs in stocks, pretty much.
So you said something really interesting, and it actually matters. It actually matters. Okay. So it is not possible. Ferrari just announced they're manufacturing and have built a manufacturing facility to make electric EVs.
Which is surprising. That was a surprising announcement. I found it surprising.
Well, what's interesting about what you probably know this, but the only market I ever called on was Italy. So I've been
Yeah,
covering Italian fund managers for probably 40 years.
nice, nice.
So I had to call some of my friends in Milan and say, look, that headline, that news about Ferrari is not true.
Yeah,
The reason Ferrari is making an electric vehicle is not to give the customer a choice, because the customer, this is capitalism. The customer doesn't get a choice.
right,
Okay. Because Ferrari knows it's an existential event, because it will be against the law for Ferrari to sell a car with a gas tank in the EU and in China and in America in exactly 10 years and 6 months.
right.
So they will be fully electric in exactly 10 years and 5 months. It's
Yeah,
period, 6 months, period. And so will Harley Davidson.
right,
And so you can't tell anyone that, because it's just too far outside the realm of things. They don't even know how to think about that.
right,
And then once again, it goes back to Ed Thorpe and Claude Shannon and John von Neumann. It goes back to the science, because what you have to ask yourself is, why don't you have wood Ferraris? Why do you have to have a gas tank? Why can't you just put wood in there? Well, it's all about the the energy efficiency.
Right,
It's about megajoules per kilogram.
right,
43 megajoules per kilogram is gasoline. What 3 megajoules per kilogram is a lithium ferro battery. But guess what? The lithium ferro battery is infinitely recyclable.
right.
And so it doesn't mean that oil goes lower, it goes to zero.
Yeah, yeah.
And you said, well, it doesn't go to zero. I mean, you still need it for cosmetics and lubricants. You know what? You're right. Maybe it doesn't go to zero, but it'll feel like zero if you
Right.
own it.
Hey, Pat, so what do you do for fun these days? Because you are a deep thinker, and I know you do a little bit of walking around while you listen to books on tape and that sort of thing. But what are you doing for fun these days? I'm just curious.
God,
If you're
this is really
making all this
so.
money, you're going to be making a ton of money. So what do you do for fun?
No, dude, I tag along with Patricia. She had to go to Boston. I'm setting up my new big trade, which is the next big grift by the global banking industry. So for fun, I went to Boston with her this week, and I sort of tracked around all of the vacant buildings, and I'm looking at those, and then um, I don't I take my walks and I listen to books and I read books. Dude, I just sit by the pool and I read science fiction and I'm reading every single book about the great financial crisis of 2008 right now. So I've been through.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm not happy with myself about that. There's a real serious self-esteem issue there.
Oh,
Okay.
what? That you didn't catch it? That you
No, no,
didn't?
no. That this is what I find fun. Okay.
Well, I want to tell people one thing, which is Pat was really surprised that we went to last time I was in Philadelphia, we went as a group to a great fish restaurant and they didn't have sardines on the menu.
There you go.
And I brought a can of sardines and I just happened to have it in my pack because I think sardines are some of the greatest protein sources in the world. And I opened the can in this high end fish restaurant, and everyone
Yep.
was shocked except me and Pat, where they don't have it on the menu. I think the waiter was about to throw us out, but he tolerated us
There
opening
you
the can. And we have to
did.
do that again. I want to go back to that restaurant again and see if they put some sardines. And of course, the lunch would be on me. And maybe we can even get Zach, although he's in New York, right, to come
No,
and
Zach might come down.
he might come down for
Zach,
that.
look, he might come down. I'm seriously, if he's in they're in Washington right now, Washington State right now. If he's in town, you guys are around, hell yeah, I'll come down.
So we're thinking about making a trip to Philadelphia, and we're trying to make it sort of a fun thing. And that's why I asked you, what do you do for fun? Because we'll also bring some cans of sardines with us in case
Dude,
that way.
I have lunch with you guys. That's fun. That's seriously, it's really tragic. It's really it weighs on me that I find this. But you know
No,
what? It's the science.
I think it's
It's the
great.
science.
Pat, you are a scholar and you're going to be well, already are, but will be many times a rich scholar. And ultimately, I'll make this prediction. Ultimately, those trillionaires will look back and say, wow, he called it. He called something that we really didn't totally believe, like we wanted to believe it. Now, maybe Bezos totally believes it. Maybe Musk totally believes it. I think Huang is more humble, and it's not about the money for him. It's about kind of changing the way people use computational power to get things done. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Zach actually has he's got a really interesting twist on Nvidia. He really doesn't like anything about Jensen, and for some reason, but I've learned to really pay attention to his instincts.
Yes.
I disagree with almost everything, but I've learned that if I think about it long enough, like like we will talk about something as banal as the moon landing. He says, "You're
Yeah.
pretty sure that happened, huh?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." He says, "Well, it was you just saw it on a screen, didn't you?" That's That's his, he's philosopher. He studied philosophy. You read his
Right,
bio, it's all philosophy.
right.
So
Yeah.
he drags me into that, and I try to keep up with him in that field, in that realm, and I really have a hard time doing it.
Well, I look
It's not
forward
easy.
to lunch with you and Zach and Pat and Lee and Zach. What's Zach's wife's first name?
Libby.
Libby. I look forward to it, and I'll send you some dates, and you'll tell me hopefully if they work, and we'll make our way.
Sure, I will figure it out. All right.
All right. Good seeing you, Pat. Take care.
Bye, my man.
Go
Ciao.
look at Trump and
Buenas
Biden
noches.
tonight. It's going to be like Rock'em Sock'em Robots tonight. It's going to be fun.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.